think we're good to go. How's it? What's up?
I know, all well, eh? Seem to be sleepy here for some weird reason.
Feeling a bit sleepy.
Yeah. Are you good?
I'm good, and I hope this conversation will wake you up.
Yeah, no. I'm looking forward to the conversation rejuvenating me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I always forget to greet.
I noticed you don't greet him. Just get right into issues.
No, it's not a good habit. It's not a good habit. Let's be abantu about it.
Yeah.
Let's be abantu about it. Senote, particularly in our study. Greetings to all African family. To Milan, Sanwana, Asheni, Mongweni, Big Swahili. Let me cover it up as well. The continent.
Yeah.
And as well, peace and love. To any of our African family who could be watching from the diaspora. It's still a small channel also, but I think we're punching above our weight a little bit at this point. Channel is slowly growing. One day take some time to look at the analytics.
Yeah, it's gradually growing.
Yeah. And it has to do because I'm trying to make sure we improve the quality of the content as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I have to send greetings to the family in the diaspora. I think it is the most Pan-African thing to do in the US, in the West Indies, everywhere else, whether in Norway, African families everywhere. So
absolutely.
Shout out to the global African family, and thank you for your continued support. Continue to watch, like, share with others, encourage others
And
to
subscribe.
watch and like and subscribe and hit the bell notification so that you keep getting the notification. So
they don't miss any episode.
Yeah, because especially now, and I'm trying to put up as much content as I can away from the day job. The day job takes so much time. Yeah. So anyway, last time, again, we discussed a number of geopolitical issues, as we always do. And I think last time we had ended off sort of alluding to talking about our good friend Vivek Ramaswamy. So I thought since last time we ended up talking at the geopolitical level or the global level of politics, we are talking between nations now. Maybe let's start international and then we'll come back home. Let's just have you watched that video of that guy? Because that interview with that lady who showed him things.
The one we discussed briefly last time.
Yeah, have you watched it, the whole thing?
No, I didn't watch the whole thing. I just watched the clip, the controversial clip, because it's actually the clip that was making rounds. I didn't get to watch the whole the whole interview. Yeah.
No, Buzo, I think let's watch it. Let's watch that video together. You're gonna hear stories. Yeah, I know. Let me know if you can hear. Can you hear the sound?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go for it. Vivek Ramaswamy. Do you want to give a short background, 2 minutes now, before we go in?
Of who Vivek is?
Yeah, and a brief background of this story. But I don't, maybe just give a brief background of who Vivek is.
I don't know much about the guy except that he was one of the early contenders of the Republican Party presidential candidate in the United States. And recently, I think a month or so ago, he actually pulled out of the race after he couldn't garner enough support, and then he threw his weight behind Donald Trump. Yeah, that's what I know about the guy. That's what I know about the guy. Also, that I know is that he's a good boy, man. Yeah, he's of Indian background. Yeah, also a guy. I think he's in his late 30s as well. So I haven't researched much on him. That's all that I know about Vivek.
Yeah, so I also don't know much about him in detail, but I do understand in terms of his political positionality in the US, when you're looking at the left and the right, I understand he's towards the right. In other words, he supports Donald Trump, the Republican Party, and that side of things.
Yeah.
Pretty much it's on the side where a lot of the white supremacists live politically, their political home, you know.
Absolutely.
Those are the guys that Donald Trump is friends with. So the white nationalists.
The white nationalists.
A lot of the time you find white nationalist Christianity, you know, in the mix there. So it's a lot of things, but basically he is I understand he was born in the US, I think, and his family has been there for generations. And it seems he has just wanted to be accepted, you know, and not just accepted in America generally, but by a specific
demographic.
You know, so I think of him as perhaps, you know, being like the people in the DA, if you were taking it in the local context. So if you were thinking about South African politics, that's where the guy would fall. If he was
be Musinaiman.
Yeah, he would be with the DA or Action SA, one of those guys. But most likely the DA, because I think those other ones they have little particles of black things there, little ones, even these neoliberal ones. So I think he would just go straight up pure DA, right wing. He wouldn't want to. So I want us to watch this guy. So this guy now is conducting an interview, right, with a white American woman. Her name is Ann Coulter. I understand she's some kind of figure there in the right wing in America.
Yeah.
And he's interviewing her and trying to start a dialogue about a whole lot of other issues, nationalism. Let me just play it. We're not going to play the whole thing because the controversial moment also is right at the beginning. So they make it easy for us. Not even 10 minutes into the interview, it's already heating up. So let's go for it.
Let's go for it.
There's an N word that you're not allowed to say anymore, but I'm going to say it. Nationalist. It doesn't have to be a bad word. We got to distinguish between two different kinds of nationalism. The first is ethno-nationalism. That's the kind people usually think of. And it's natural because most nations' identities have been built around an ethnicity or a religion or a monarch. And in that case, the track record of history hasn't been great for what that type of nationalism produces, either for a country or for its neighbors. Distinct from that, though, is civic nationalism. And that's the kind of nationalism that I think is relevant in the United States of America because our country is defined not based on an ethnicity, not based on a language or a monarch or a cuisine or a religion.
Hey, man. Take note, man. Our country, it is not based on any race, religion. Let's continue.
For that matter.
Let's hear Mr. Vivek educate us. We're in class now. I'm taking notes. Where's my pen? I'm taking notes. All right.
Our country is defined on the basis of a civic set of ideals
Okay.
that brought together a divided polyglot and, yes, religiously diverse group of people 250 years ago. And so I don't think that that's the kind of nationalism we need to run from. I think we believe in the exceptionalism of those ideals. That's what American exceptionalism is about. It is a belief in the exceptionalism of the ideals that made this country great the first time around. And I think we're reaching an interesting fork in the road for the future of our conservative movement. You could leave behind the neocon, interventionist, surveillance state past of the conservative movement. But let's talk about where we're headed. The pro-nationalist, positive nationalist vision for the future. I think there are some interesting divides that haven't yet been smoked out between, say, a libertarian nationalist movement that I particularly find appealing for the future of our country, believing in the libertarian ideals of freedom from a government that we elect, not an unelected class of bureaucrats. And yes, believing in the exceptionalism of those ideals at the same time that we believe in a national identity, the idea that a nation without borders is not a nation, a libertarian breed of nationalism, versus the revival of what I see as a different kind of reactionary nationalism, one that we can expand and use the tools of the state when necessary to achieve our pro-American or nationalistic goals. And yes, one that does believe that there is some element of ethnic heritage that defines what it means to be an American. I'm sympathetic to that view, though I disagree with it. And that's why on today's podcast, I wanted to bring on somebody who's a fellow conservative, a fellow nationalist.
Listen to how he's framing it. I would like to welcome a fellow, you know,
though she
fellow
claims in forms of
nationalist.
citizenship,
hey,
and somebody who actually believes in the ideals of this country, but on whom I think we still have some disagreements about the role that ethnicity plays in grounding the identity of the United States of America. Somebody I'm curious about, following, haven't met in person yet, but we're going to bring her on the podcast today. That's Ann Coulter.
get back to it. Let's get back to class.
Nationalism. It's a touchy word. You're not supposed to say the N word anymore, but I'll say it. Nationalism. I don't think it has to be a bad word, not in the American context. But there's two kinds of nationalism that I think we need to distinguish between. Historically, nationalism has been associated with ethno-nationalism.
Is he repeating or is it still continuing?
Yeah, it's continuing. This is the this is the part now where she's going to come in.
Oh.
Now he's preparing to invite her.
Oh, he's laying the ground.
Yeah. Why is that? Most nations are founded on the existence of a single ethnicity, at least as the backdrop of that nation's identity, a culture, a religious set of institutions, maybe a religion itself as a state religion, a monarch. These are the things that have historically grounded the identity of a nation. Well, nationalism refers to the idea of effectively viewing the exceptionalism of your nation relative to those around you and your national pride as an anchoring of your own identity. And that's led to, I would say, consequences throughout the course of human history that haven't always been great as judged by posterity. You could think about single-handed dictators for much of American history and global history that have been defined on the back of being nationalist. Well, I don't think that that's necessarily the definition that needs to apply in the American context of civic nationalism. Beautiful thing about America is that we're not a country defined on the basis of necessarily.
So, so far as I'm following our lecturer here, I think he's saying that he makes a distinction between ethnic nationalism and civic nationalism, for which he subscribes to the civic nationalism because he believes it is the best for America, our country. Yeah, let's listen more.
A single cuisine or a single ethnicity or a single religion, but we're a nation defined on a single set of ideals that brought together a divided polyglot and, yes, even religiously diverse group of people 250 years ago. And so I think that's what's at stake in the context of being an American nationalist, is whether or not you're committed to those civic ideals. That's a different question from being an ethno-nationalist. Now, I do think that there are many now in our conservative movement, as we look to the future of a conservative movement that puts aside the historical neocon baggage of interventionist foreign policy and a domestic surveillance state, put that to the past. I think we're headed to a future where we still have to define what the different branches of a pro-nationalist conservative vision are here in the United States. I see the emergence of a strain that's skeptical of civic nationalism, believes that civic nationalism is really just on the other side that's skeptical of that. It says, you know what, we're the future direction of our country, of our conservative movement. And on this question of nationalism and national identity, somebody I've been fascinated by for a long time and have interacted with on social media, but for the first time we're having at least a live form conversation in the offline sense of it. It's Ann Coulter. So Ann, thanks for coming on, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too. Thanks for having me. That was a fantastic opening monologue. I too am a fan of yours. I'm going to make a point of disagreeing with you so that it will be fun. You are so bright and articulate, and I guess I can call you articulate since you're not an American Black. Can't say that about them. That's true.
Oh, oh. Hey. So she's dropping bars. Already.
She's gun blazing.
She's coming in guns blazing. Imagine. I know, my boy, you speak well. You speak well, my boy. Right? You're very articulate. What a wonderful opening monologue. You hear the patronizing poem.
Yeah. It's hard to miss.
Anyway.
Derogatory. And that was a great opening segment. Lots of things to talk about there. Oh, and I agreed with many, many things you said during, in fact, probably more than most other candidates for president, but I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian. We'll get back to that. And it's
that's the moment
than most other candidates when you're running for president, but I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian. We'll get back to that.
Also, the thing that grabs me, you know, although I like your positions, I was fascinated. Although I wouldn't vote for you because you're an Indian. We'll get back to that.
Yeah, she's I think the first thing that she does, especially with that statement, it shatters the whole notion that he was actually promoting of the whole idea of America not being based on, you know, this narrow ethnic nationalism. Then what she's saying, it actually reinforces that whole idea that he was trying to run away from. And actually here you are dealing with ethno-nationalists, to use his terminology.
Let's listen to her a little. Let's hear what she says further after she just insulted him. After he literally, I mean, this guy, I think what he's having here is what our brother, the US, call a Negro wake-up moment. You know, I think a lot of Black people have this moment. You know, locally, Musi Maimane and them, they had their Negro wake-up moment. Then in the US, we know Candace Owens also had a Negro wake-up moment because I mean, she was used to saying anything she likes about Black people. Then she says something about the Jews, and she gets bulldozed. You know, and so it's like, you know, almost growing up that the guys there were those guys who were bullies, né? And then they knew that I know here I dominate. No one can beat me here. The day they meet their match, the day they meet their match, they are surprised. So she was used to she was like, I can say anything I like, So she also maybe kind of somewhere, because I think she's intelligent enough to know and understand.
So this Truth podcast, is this in any way associated with the social media app owned by Donald Trump, Truth?
Sure, but it could be. I mean, he works there, so it could be related. You understand?
Okay.
That's us, but I don't know for a fact. But I mean, we know who he works for.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's.
Story. And that was a great opening segment. Lots of things to talk about there. Oh, and I agreed with many, many things you said during, in fact, probably more than most other candidates when you were running for president. But I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian. We'll get back to that. And it's directly related to what you were just talking about. The thing about nationalism, you're totally right. It is like, to use the word nationalism, oh, it's Hitler, it's Hitler. And, Hitler had soup. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have soup. Hitler loved dogs. That doesn't mean you shouldn't love dogs. So I think we have to move past this. If Hitler did it, it must be bad. But I do notice when I was listening to your monologue, I don't think I do use the word nationalism. I would use a word you used in your monologue, which I liked quite a bit, and that's citizenship. There's citizenism. How about Americanism?
Yeah.
I also pointed out not allowed to be proud ethnic group do tend to be Anglo. Oh, you can't be proud of being white. Whereas, watch a soccer game and see, it's Venezuela, we're Mexicans. It's funny, Hispanics don't even think of themselves as Hispanics. They think of themselves as the country they're from. I think French feel very proud to be French. We saw Macron expressly objecting wokeness on the grounds that this is an American institution. We're not going to import this. So you do see basically every other ethnic group very proud of their ethnic group. And the thing I'd say about America, okay, no single cuisine, but you can get Chinese food and Mexican food in Paris and Tokyo. Food has definitely migrated across countries. There is a core national identity that is the identity of the WASP. And that doesn't mean we can't take anyone else in, a Sri Lanka.
Also, get that.
Yeah, but I'm trying to play along. I wanted to finish this point she's making.
Lankan or a Japanese or an Indian, but the core around which the nation's values are formed is the WASP. We've never had a president who didn't have at least partial English ancestry.
WASP. Also. WASP.
What is
what
WASP?
a WASP is? I also did not know, Kuso. I found out that country, the core, the American right in terms of the hierarchy. That's why she's saying there's a core identity. The core identity is the WASP, and WASP stands for it's white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant.
White Anglo Protestant. Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. WASP.
Oh, that's WASP. I didn't know.
Yeah, that is the core. I also didn't know, bro. I just learned about it when I was looking at this story and I heard about WASP and I researched it a bit. I'm like, oh, these guys are deep, bro. They are clear. They're like, no. So that's why she's trying to explain to him that, look, we understand that you want to be, but you can't be. Because I mean, he's not white. He's not white.
Nah, definitely
Anglo-Saxon.
isn't.
Neither is he Protestant. So he doesn't have anything there.
Yeah. And she goes back to the point that I raised earlier, that her definition of nationalism is not that civic nonsense that he was trying to fabricate. It's actually ethnic. And I like the fact that when she says, she unapologetically rejects the notion that anything that Hitler did or stood for is inherently bad. She's unapologetic. This is
Yeah.
she's clear. And
it's beautiful to watch, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's I don't know, man. And also one of the hopes I would have is that our brothers and sisters who are blindly trusting in whiteness to save our country must think about this thing. That them thinking that if they put their trust in parties like the DA, for example, and other right-wing forces, that this is going to be their redemption, and that there actually is non-racialism. That let this be instructive that no, there is no such. These people are clear.
They're
and it goes back to that. Yeah, it goes back to that thing we ended up talking about, that issue of sensibilities.
Yeah.
That, I mean, you can have all this rhetoric about, no, we are a diverse, non-racial party. What? But, man, you can feel this thing that, no, man. You can't explain it intellectually because the documents don't say anything racist.
No, absolutely.
The rhetoric doesn't say anything racist. But your sensibilities feel that I am not at home here.
It goes back to what we were saying last week. I think the last time we touched on this point to say that I think proponents of non-racialism want to put the cart before the horse. Because non-racialism should be actually the goal. It can't be the starting point. The starting point has to
be. It's not a strategy.
Yeah.
Non-racialism is not a strategy.
The starting point has to be anti-racism.
Yeah.
Because then non-racialism starts off that it suggests that all these contradictions that we have, these racial contradictions that we have, and the animosity that are entrenched, centuries old, entrenched in society through different means, they should just be overlooked, or either that they can just disappear without actually us putting in the work to reverse some of these things.
What is it? Osmosis.
It doesn't work. Doesn't work like that.
It must just happen. No, it's not. It's not automatic.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I know. Let's finish up with these folks.
Never. We've only had one Catholic president. There was only one Catholic signatory to the Declaration of Independence. They were all not only Protestants, but pretty much Presbyterian. King George referred to the American Revolution as the Presbyterian War. So there is a lot in the freedom thing. Samuel Huntington of Harvard has written about this in a fantastic book I recommend to everyone, Who Are We? And he describes how, back in colonial times, interestingly enough, for example, Jews could vote, but Catholics couldn't because people thought they would be more loyal to Rome once they became more American Catholic and less Roman Catholic. Then they were just, part of us and part of Americans. But you do notice, and he describes why so many countries that have not done very well are dominated by Catholicism. It's much more from the top down. It lends itself to an authoritarian governance, whereas Calvinists, it's between you and God, and moreover, because of the Presbyterian, I think every ethnic group has this, the WASP work ethic and the Jewish work ethic, and I'm sure there is an Indian work ethic, but specifically with Presbyterians or Protestants, let me put it that way, and the Calvinism, even though it might not be theologically true, but the idea that you are part of the chosen and you prove that by being successful. It's almost the reverse in Catholic countries, not so much this country because America.
The idea that you are the chosen and you prove this by being successful. Also, the undertones of white supremacy, you have that. And again, if we juxtapose with SA now, South Africa, with the DA saying, we are the saviors, guys. They're not saying we the white people, but the subtext. That's what it's saying. But our people are not hearing that.
Yeah, that's what they are actually. That's the message they're delivering. It's in.
Yeah.
Part of communication, especially if you understand communication at a higher level, you get to appreciate the words that are not said, that are not written. You get to understand the nuances, and also in written speech, in spoken speech, you get to see what's not written there. Then you get to understand, okay, actually, there's a message behind this message. And the message behind this message, it doesn't just speak about good governance. It speaks to it speaks to the racial makeup of people behind so-called good governance.
So, and you see the sort of narrative then that is painted in. We had apartheid. The apartheid state machinery was proper. It was a well-oiled machinery. Now they keep saying, and then, but the conditions were not so great for the Africans. Now we moved into a democratic period. Taken over by a black government that is just incompetent. So you have the apartheid state, well-oiled machinery, incompetent democratic government, and now they're saying, guys, let's take it back to how it was, because you guys know we are the ones who know this thing of running states and doing things, you understand, and delivering, So essentially, that's what's being said, essentially, that look, man, if you want to fix this country, you got to give it back to us. And the dangerous thing is a lot of our people are starting to say these kinds of things. That maybe we must bring back whites. They're not even saying, let's vote for the DA. No, they're saying, take out this black government, must just bring back whites. You're like, how?
The colonial administration is better run by the colonialists.
Yeah. There are things that let them run there. So this is the thinking that, and I think, hey man, one of the most detrimental things that could ever happen is those narratives feeding into this picture, painting this picture of African incompetence as a grand truth. You understand?
No, it is, and that's what it is.
Yeah, not looking at it in a nuanced way, like any normal human being.
Yeah, and you struggle to distinguish. I've struggled to distinguish when the DA or some of the white people that are associated with them or right-wingers criticize the ANC. I struggled actually to distinguish between, a genuine criticism that you and I can have over things like service delivery, over things like corruption. I struggle to distinguish between that on one hand and actually just a feeling that here, what is actually being criticized here, it's actually not these things that are purported to be the issue here. But the issue here is perceived black incompetence and inherent corruption, you know, and things like these uncivilized people need us to actually govern over them because they cannot do it on their own. I struggle. I don't know whether it's because of the delivery or it's because of what, but I struggle. And that's why, you know, I've had a lot of white people who, and I can tell even in their tone when they speak about Jacob Zuma, that here, no, you are lying. Let's be honest. Here, your issue is not the man here. Your issue is not the man here. Here, your issue is the group that the man represents or comes from. And then you're using him. Now, you're using him as a symbol to attack that group. And this is not to say, and this is not to say, by the way, yeah, and this is not to say, let me just finish this point. This is not to say, there isn't things to criticize about the ANC, about Jacob Zuma, these things that I've been speaking about, or lack of service delivery or that. But that from our white compatriots here in this country, we struggle to tell whether this criticism is actually, what's the point of this criticism? We struggle. And
so again, if you're a player, you are able to pick up these things that are, no, it's game. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, because let's be realistic also. Zuma among his peers, I mean, Zuma is not a Thabo Mbeki. He's not a Mandela. He's not a Ramaphosa. You know, I mean, he does not speak English like this. You know, I mean, you understand, he's not a Mbeki, he's not a Ramaphosa, he's not a Mandela, you know, and I think to what you are saying, it goes beyond the people he represents. It's just that he is perceived as being unpolished. You know, he didn't bathe enough in Eurocentrism, you know, and the others are more refined gentlemen, you know, like this one. So that's why the insults and everything against him, that Mbeki never was subjected to, Mandela and the others. Him, because he had this African thing about him. I mean, the way he was, he could just start talking in Zulu at any time. Oh, my God. You know, he's that guy. He's not polished, man. That's why I think.
Yeah, he doesn't meet established white standards.
Yeah?
He doesn't meet established white standards.
Yeah,
especially those associated with the office he occupied.
Decorum, man, that we expect of a president. And then you ask, so this decorum, when did we agree on it? And what was the point? You know what I'm saying? So you're going to ask, there's so many questions we still have to ask about even the systems that we use and why we use them, and if they are still relevant to what we need to do, you know? And so I don't know. I think let's just hear this guy respond after he just got insulted, and then we will move on.
Yeah.
Let's just hear his initial response after he has put this woman on a pedestal, you know, and he has basically kissed her feet and he placed her on the royal pedestal, and then she spit on him. So now let's see what he does.
Let's hear what he has to.
She spit on him. Oh boy.
American Catholics have basically become Protestants. And that is this worship of being poor, as if you are closer to God because you're poor. That's not the way to create a like on-the-go developing country.
No, I think that's an interesting tour through that historical lane, but I want to pick on one point you said, which is citizenship, right? Let's talk about what does it mean to be a citizen of a nation. And it's interesting, A lot of people trip up on this. They'll say, well, it means what you get, right? Do I get to vote or do I get some other claim? And that doesn't really work. Actually, if you look through most of American history, for example, women were citizens long before.
So, yeah, I think. Hey, Puso. So, you know, one other thing I think about when I think about this guy,
Yeah.
he gives me his political posture very much kind of is reminiscent for me of Gandhi, a kind of problematic in many, you know. I remember from my favorite story, Bambata's Revolution. You know that at that time, Gandhi said to the colonial, he was trying to petition the colonial administration to mob Indians into the army so that the army can fight against Bambata and squash this rebellion. So
Yeah.
and go up in the hierarchy, you know, so that they are not treated like his main issue was not the system. It was that
They're being treated like
him
that.
and his people, their position in it, that's what he was fighting about. You know, he wanted a better position in the hierarchy. So this guy, this guy reminds me of his ancestor, you know, that, hey, man, this guy he just, for me, is so reminiscent of any problematic aspects of Gandhi, you know, like to really just want this acceptance.
Yeah.
So I also, those are the, that is Vivek. And like I said, we talk about these things to make reference to our own local context. You know, also, I think all of us really would like to believe in the ideals of equality, of a truly equal society.